This is Gabrijela. She works with Napster at 5, and she has 2 cats, which she really likes, apparently. And also, this is her first talk ever, so let's give her a really warm welcome.
Thank you, guys. So, hi, my name is Gabrijela. Oh my God, okay. So, I work at 5 Agency here in Zagreb, and today I would like to share my experience on preparing and conducting usability testing sessions with 2- and 3-year-olds. And I would also like to share my findings with you. The topic might be slightly different from the others, but I hope you will enjoy it and learn something useful from it. Now, let's start. So, the presentation is divided in 4 main sections. First, I'm going to introduce you to the target group. Then we'll look at the apps I tested. After that, we'll look at the usability testing sessions and see key findings. And finally, I will show you the solution I created. But before that, I would just like to tell you a bit more how I decided to work with those kids who can barely speak. So, while I was trying to figure out what would be the topic for my thesis, I spent some time with my nephew and cousins who were around 2 and 3 years old. And observing them, I noticed that almost all children were impressed with tablet applications. So, I decided to research the experience in existing apps and see if there's opportunity for me to do something better. And I would also like to mention that when I started to research the topic, I was totally against tablets in children's hands. So I had 2 options: to give up and find some other topic for the thesis, or to try to understand the problem and find a solution which would be good for parents and children. Now, let me start by defining the problem I wanted to solve. So parents give tablet to their children when they don't have time, or they are just too tired, and they hope apps will entertain their children. My solution to that problem was to create an educative tablet application to entertain children so that parents would have a moment for themselves. Now, moving to the target group. So in order to introduce you to the profile of the children I work with, I created 2 personas. Emma and Noah are 2 and 3 years old. They have their own interests, and both of them had previously used tablet. Some of them can barely speak. They're still developing social, emotional, and motor skills. They like to singing and drawing. They're learning by repeating things and playing with them. And they also like to show the things they learned. However, there are some age-related differences. For example, 3-year-olds have better motor skills, and they started to understand how to think abstractly. On the other hand, 2-year-olds are hard to understand because they still don't know how to communicate everything what they want to say. The next target group were the parents, who will install, approve, and deinstall the tablet app. So they were actually my primary target group. While recruiting the participants for my study, I learned a little bit about them. So at first, I managed to find 8 participants who would test existing apps. But only 4 of them actually went through the research. When I asked for the reason, they said they didn't want for their children to be tested or observed, fearing that their children might be afraid of the new experience. Others wanted to see the apps before the research, because they didn't want to expose their children to ugly or inappropriate content. All of that led me to conclude that parents were overprotective of their children, which was something I had to be careful about during the research. Now, let's look at the apps I tested and see why I chose them. After I had played hundreds of apps, I decided to use these 4: Peekaboo UFO, Monkey Hide and Seek for Kids, Lumi Kids Park, and Dr. Panda Firefighters. They had similar tasks because I wanted to get as accurate data as possible. So the task in the first 3 apps were to find the characters. It was similar to hide-and-seek apps. But each of them had some differences, though. The first one had textures. The second one had large color palette, and the characters were outlined to make them look like they are in the foreground. The third one had unusual characters, and as you can see, this app had background which was hardly noticeable. And the last app was different from the others because it was designed in 3D, and it was more open than the first 3 I mentioned. To sum up, each of those apps had elements I wanted to test and observe, of course. And those are how visual elements like colors, textures, shades affect participants' attention. Is it important to make a difference between the foreground and background? How do animation disturb participants' attention? Do children love more open or closed games? And can they interact with 3D design? So let's move to the usability testing sessions. The difference between the regular testing and this one was preparing session for parents and children. So I had to work with 2 participants in one session and prepare parents and educators not to interfere with their children's actions. So in a way, they were like second moderator in my usability testing sessions. The parents' role was to sign participants' agreement, help me with translating what their child wanted to say, and help their children to adjust to a new person, which was me. I wanted for my participants to be in their familiar surroundings, so it would be easier for them to relax and accept me. Because of that, I conducted usability testing sessions at their homes or in kindergarten. The method I used for my study was observing, interviewing, and tracking success time. I expected the session will last between 20 and 30 minutes, and I prepared session script accordingly, but that wasn't the case in most of my interviews. Now a bit more about the sessions. So first I had to bond with the kids, which was fun. I played with all their favorite toys. And then, when the right moment came, I showed them the tablet, and we began the sessions. During the sessions, most of them asked me if they were doing tasks correctly. And here, I had to pretend that I didn't know anything and that they have to show me. Almost all sessions went well. However, not all on-site testing were that easy. So some of the participants didn't want to end the session. But I solved those issues with treats like chocolate. Others started to cry. And I wasn't ready for that. But still, in the end, everything went well. After sessions, I analyzed screen and voice recordings and got to some conclusions. I made conclusions by observing and tracking time they needed to collect first 4 characters. And here are my findings. So 7 out of 9 participants had the best time in Lumi Kids Park app. The rest of them had better time in Peekaboo UFO app. Now let's compare the design and gameplay for the first 3 hide-and-seek apps. Peekaboo UFO. You can see colorful scene with textures. There are some plants which look similar to the alien characters participants looked for. And what was interesting, participants looked for the eyes. And because of that, they thought that plants were the alien characters. Also, I noticed that bee, which was flying around, disturbed their attention. So if they didn't see any characters, they would just tap on it without any reason. So my findings from this game were, don't use too many colors, and use animation only if you want to emphasize something. Now let's move to the second app, Monkey Hide and Seek for Kids. Children like this game because they saw familiar animals like a dog, a cat, a cow, and so on. And when they found all hidden characters, they could pop the balloons for reward, which was fun for them. But the measured time wasn't that good. So first thing which was strange for them was the intro scene, which you can see on this slide. So there is a zoom in animation to show them that there is more space outside of the screen the participants could look for and explore. But almost nobody got that. The second thing was the reactions to some of the elements. So if they tap on the apple, they would get voice reactions which counted the apples and the animation of it. That was quite fun for participants. However, that disturbed their attention to that extent where most of them forgot what their task had been. And the last thing were the tasks, which were in strict order. So they had to find one particular character at a time, and this was frustrating for them because they saw some other character and they wanted to get a reward for finding it. So my findings from this game were create your app on one screen and give children opportunity to solve the tasks in a few different ways. Now, participants had the best time in the third app. Let's see what was different. So you can see that the screen is clear. There are no distractions while completing the tasks. And furthermore, the game was based on the level design. So participants first got the easier tasks, and then tasks got harder and harder. But after a while, I noticed that children become less interested in this game because they would get stuck on some level, or the game become too easy for them. So my finding from this game was to have adaptable levels for children with different knowledge and skills. Now, with this, I will end the presentation of the findings of the hide-and-seek apps, and we'll move to the last game I tested. Dr. Panda Firefighters. With this game, I wanted to test two important things, and those are 3D design and openness of the game, where participants could do whatever they like. So on screen, you can see a delightful opening scene, where participants could explore the space and interact with some of the elements. But participants in my study didn't know what to do there. The second thing was the touch and drop field and the drag interactions. So they had to drag clothes or can with the water to the specific point. And this experience was exhausting for them because of the two reasons. So some of them couldn't hold and drag the item that long. Others had problems with too small drop field. And here are my findings. So use simple interactions, too many choices limit children, and pay attention to the size of the touch field. Now, after I done this research, I conducted one more regarding the colors and character design, and then it was time for me to create my own solution for the hide-and-seek app. Here I wanted to focus on ideal experience and not on a new idea of the education in the app. So I designed a multi-level game with 3 levels of difficulty to be interesting to children with different knowledge and skills. Unfortunately, I won't have time to talk about the mechanism of the gameplay and level design, but I will be able to show you the difference in difficulty in the next couple of slides. So this first level, it's really simple. The screen is clear. The colors of the main characters were brighter than the rest of the scene in order to draw more attention to the characters and where will they move and hide. The second level is a bit harder. You can see leaves around one of the hedgehogs, and the rest of them hide behind them. After a couple of levels, leaves start to move around the character in the middle. So you can see that I used just a few colors there, and the animation is here because of the specific task. The last level is, of course, the most difficult one. First, it seems quite simple, but then trees and stars appears in the background, and the characters get more colors. So after a while, there are a lot of things to process, and it's harder to concentrate on the characters and where will they move and hide. But I would like to point out that each of the distractions gets on screen gradually after user mastered the basic levels. After I designed the app, I created prototype into Pixate software, and then it was time for usability testing. I was so excited about it, but in the end, sadly, it was a disaster because the prototype wasn't as persuasive as it should be. They wanted to hear sounds. They wanted to see a lovely animation when they tap on something. So my advice here is to prepare a great prototype for them, including transitions, animations, and sound effects, because they don't understand that prototype isn't a finished version of the app. And if they don't have interesting interactions, they will not be interested in playing your game. To summarize, I must say that I've only just scratched the surface of the things I could test with this kind of product. And I would like to end this presentation with a friendly advice. When working on a product, try to pay attention to every single detail and test your work or some other product which are similar to a future one with your target group. Because I know if I hadn't done all that research, I would have designed a totally different game, probably with textures, drag interactions, and I would have chosen some other characters which wouldn't have been as attractive as the one children chose. With this, we have arrived to the end of the presentation. And now, if you have questions, I would be glad to answer them.
Any questions? We still have 10 minutes before lunch, so there's no rush to run out that door. I have one. Are you going to finish the game? Is it available, or do you have plans to release it?
Yeah, I didn't plan that, but it would be actually great to do that.
So you need like partners to do a startup with you then?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone? Yep.
Hi, first of all, congratulations on your first talk. It was great.
Thank you.
I have a question about, you said increased difficulty or adapt difficulty as it progresses. How did you work that in, or how did you sort of figure out a way to do it in a meaningful way, in a dynamic way?
Oh, I wrote a lot of things about it, so I think that they deserve more attention than just one answer. So if you want, you can give me your email, and I will be glad to share with you everything.
Any other questions? Yep, all the way in the back. Do you have a Twitter account? Oh, it's on screen, okay. So we can tweet you questions also.
Hello. So obviously development time and research and all of that is not free, right? So how would you monetize the app? How would you pay for the resources that you would invest in the app? Do you think it would be like ethical to advertise to children, or would it be like a one-time purchase or something like that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly.
How would you monetize the application to pay for the development time and the research and everything else, if you would do it, of course?
So for instance, like someone has to pay for the research you spent with the 2-year-olds. And if you went on to release this app, would you have it like a purchase app, or would you have adverts in it? I think that's kind of the core.
I didn't think about marketing thing. I was more thinking about like how create a better experience and how to help parents to track their children's progression or stuff like that. So.
One more over here.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm interested in this part. You said they struggled with the drag action, so I'm interested, are they not familiar with it, or they just don't know how to do, they drop the items? Like, could you just give me a few more hints about what was the problem?
They are familiar with it, but it was like too long for them. It should be shorter because they have small fingers and tablet is big, so the whole path should be just shorter.
Okay.
Oh my God.
More questions. You can't run away yet.
I will write a blog post, okay?
Okay, I have a question. How hard was it to work with children because their brains were completely on a different level, and how did you manage to like draw conclusions from their actions, because a child cannot tell you what it wants, what it means? So how did you work that out, working with small children?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, parents helped me in this to get to all these conclusions because, yeah, I didn't know those children's, and it's been hard for me to read their thoughts and their minds. So after sessions, I talk with parents, and they gave me their conclusions, and that's it basically.
One last question.
Hey, congratulations. So you mentioned at the beginning that some parents are reluctant to give tablets to their children. And given the application you designed, my question is if you think it has any educational value for such small children, and if so, how would you market it to parents? So if children can develop some skill set using the app.
Okay. Yeah, this game. Actually, the whole theme I worked by a few apps which have described their like educative versions and educative purpose of the app. So I didn't go there, and I didn't spend too many time on the figuring out the educational level of the app.
Okay. I find it hard to believe this was your first talk. Thank you again. Let's have another round of applause.